So, the other day, I rewatched a film that I've watched before. I think it might have been my fourth viewing, maybe even my fifth. Usually, when I watch a movie this many times, it's because of one of two reasons. The movie's really good and I love it, or the movie's really stupid and I love to make fun of it with friends.
Do you want lunch?
This movie, however, was neither. This movie was Wild Wild West. Wild Wild West, released in 1999, starring Will Smith and Kevin Kline, is not a good movie. It is also not a so bad it's good movie. It follows the useful rule of thumb that when drama fails, it becomes funny, and when comedy fails, it becomes the most unbearable thing you've ever had to sit through. The point is, I have not watched this movie as many times as I have because I get any joy out of it. This is not fun for me. This is an academic exercise. I watch this movie to learn. Because this movie fascinates me. It compels me. For years now, I have been at a total loss to understand why this movie sucks so hard. Warner Brothers in the late 90s was desperate for a hit. They'd suffered major financial losses and needed a guaranteed moneymaker to put them back on top. They were particularly skeptical of superhero films after the failure of Batman and Robin.
Yes, kill him! Yeah!
So they canceled Tim Burton's ambitious but weird Superman Lives project and instead gave the green light to an adaptation of the 1960s spy western series The Wild Wild West. There had been a previous attempt to make the film a number of years prior, with a script by Shane Black and Richard Donner attached to direct. But it languished in development hell, and Warner Brothers gave the project to Barry Sonnenfeld and attached Will Smith and Kevin Kline as stars. On paper, it all makes perfect sense. Big screen adaptations of old TV shows were a prominent trend in the 90s. Some were good, some were not good, but it was something studios felt confident risking their money on. The Wild Wild West was a hybrid of Western show and spy show, and in the late 90s, both genres were experiencing mild revivals. So it was a solid choice of material. And the problem was not the people they hired. The writing credits of this movie are a laundry list of well-established Hollywood talent. The first draft of the film was written by S.S. Wilson and Brent Maddock, who had established themselves with the Short Circuit and Tremors movies. Also credited are Jeffrey Price and Peter Seaman, screenwriters of Who Framed Roger Rabbit, as well as Jim and John Thomas, creators of the Predator series. Proven hitmakers all. To direct, they brought in Barry Sonnenfeld, who had recently made a fortune with Men in Black. The producer was John Peters. Now, anyone who has heard the Kevin Smith story or seen Licorice Pizza knows that John Peters is a maniac, but he had a track record of successful films. And their clincher? Will Smith, the biggest star on the planet. You know, someone once asked me, shortly before the live-action Aladdin film came out, if I was a fan of Will Smith. And I told them honestly that he wasn't as cool as he was in the 90s. But to contextualize, I added that no human being has ever been as cool as Will Smith was in the 90s. We have since learned that it is more than possible to misuse Will Smith. But in the 90s, he could do no wrong. And again, because they needed this to be a surefire hit, they went with a proven formula, pairing up Will Smith with an uptight white guy who could be a comedic foil. They went with Kevin Kline, someone who they had every reason to believe would be perfect for the part. For the bad guy, they cast Kenneth Branagh to ham it up. For the female lead, they cast Salma Hayek to be sexy. And for the role of President Ulysses S. Grant, they cast Kevin Kline. Again, for some reason. Everything here should work. Good choice of material to adapt. A lot of screenwriters, but they're all pros. Will Smith is at his peak. His chemistry with Kevin Kline should sing. And Barry Sonnenfeld at the helm, the man who directed Smith in Men in Black and helmed a successful 60s TV show adaptation with his Addams Family movies. And yet... Wild Wild West isn't just disappointing. It's not even just bad. It's shockingly, bafflingly awful. Everything about it fails. Everything. Will Smith and Kevin Kline do not have chemistry. The effects are awful. The storyline is absurd and not in a good way. All of Kenneth Branagh's hamminess and Salma Hayek's sexiness can't make anything fun out of their characters. And the jokes are not funny. Jesus Christ, are the jokes not funny. Not a single joke in this film lands. Will Smith, at the peak of his powers, can't make them land. Kevin Kline, who won a super rare Oscar for a comedic role in A Fish Called Wanda, can't make them land. And Barry Sonnenfeld can't make them land. Barry Sonnenfeld, who, need I remind you, directed The Addams Family Values, a film where, and I've counted, there is one joke that the movie repeats over and over again. And it's funny every time. This guy knows how to direct comedy. And herein lies my fascination with this movie. I straight up do not understand how and why this film is so bad. Who fucked up? How did they fuck up? How did they fuck up so bad that such immense talent went to waste? What's going on here? Some of the jokes aren't even bad on paper. They just land like a wet fart on screen. I feel honest to God ignorant watching this movie. Why did I go to movie school if I didn't learn enough to understand why this film isn't good? I couldn't accept the mystery. So I dug deep and I learned some things. And here's what I learned. The story of Wild Wild West production is a story of how you sometimes just can't help but fuck up a good thing. Perhaps because Warner Brothers so desperately needed this film to be a success, they just had no faith in letting the process run. The film has 6 credited writers, but it's likely that many, many more people did passes or script doctor work than were ultimately credited. There were a lot of drafts of this film, one of which may have possibly featured nuclear bombs, and that's even before the spider came along. Not all the history of this film is known. Rarely in the annals of Hollywood history does a script with this many rewrites turn into something good. It's a too many cooks situation. Instead of a cohesive vision by writers who truly care, you get a Frankenstein's monster cobbled together from people paid to redo others' work. It's a surefire way to squeeze out any passion or originality. Except the spider, maybe. It's stupid, but you can't call it unoriginal. Now, maybe the irresistible pairing of Smith and Kline could have kept a mediocre script afloat. But that was not to be. Kevin Kline was not remotely interested in playing the straight man to Will Smith's funny guy, and instead tried to one-up him with the comedy. This complicates what should be a clear dynamic. Watching the film, you can't quite tell who's supposed to be playing it straight and who's the funny one. That still could work if both actors were committed. But Kline apparently was not at all happy being the second most famous actor on set, and his lack of enthusiasm shines through. Will Smith does his best, but you get a sense that the negative energy of the whole production was getting to him. There's just so much less spark to his performance than there should be. Lines that should get laughs just don't. Look at this scene. Will Smith has gotten into trouble at a fancy southern ball and needs to talk himself out of getting hanged. This could be a moment where he shines, using his natural charm and wit to turn this crowd of racist southerners to his side. An absurd prospect, but one that 90s Will Smith should be able to pull off. But instead he drones his way through a mediocre, unfunny monologue with a sense that he just wants the scene to be over already, while the crowd just sort of stares. It's one more big nothing of a scene. Speaking of scenes that suck, this scene. The worst scene in the movie. This happened at John Peters' insistence, despite Barry Sonnenfeld knowing for a fact it wouldn't work. And he was right, it doesn't work. It's stupid and juvenile and grinds the whole movie to a halt. But Peters wanted it, so it's in there. And then, in another guaranteed sign of success, they reshot half the film. Test audiences apparently thought it was too PG, so the studio panicked and made them add tons and tons of boob jokes and butt jokes and dick jokes, none of which land. This is where you can really feel Barry Sonnenfeld just going through the motions. This guy knows how to direct comedy, but why bother when the jokes are this awful? So he pretty much stops trying. What it all adds up to is a film that, despite its wackiness, feels lifeless. Just about everyone involved might be talented, but none of them want to be there. Not the writers, not the director, not the stars. And I think that is the secret ingredient to this movie's failure. You can feel, oozing through the screen, that no one in this film is happy. No one is making the movie they want to make. No one is giving it their all. And that's a factor that, though hard to quantify on paper, can easily kill a movie. It killed this one. I could end the video here. I think I've reached my point. I think I figured out the why to why this film was bad, but I can't end it here. I can't end it here, not when there's one more burning question in my mind. What the hell is up with this scene?
Sorry.
Let's watch it again. Will Smith's fighting this cyborg Frankenstein guy who looks like the monster I used to play at Six Flags for Halloween. He hits him with a wrench a bunch of times, and it doesn't hurt him at all. Then he hands him the wrench and says sorry. And then the cyborg guy lifts the wrench up to hit him and dies? What happened? Why'd the dude die? Was it something Will Smith did? Was it just a well-timed short circuit? Why did he give him a wrench and say sorry? Why would he do that? What's going on here? What's happening in this scene? Someone explain it to me, damn it! Maybe there's some mysteries that just can't be solved. Anyway, like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell or whatever, and I'll see you folks next time.